Senator Chuck Grassley, or as I like to call him, America's Angry Grandpa, spoke to the Senate, and he yearned for the good old days of civility. Check this out.
What we have learned is the resistance that has existed since the day after the November 2016 election is centered right here on Capitol Hill. They have encouraged mob rule. When you hear things about get in their face, bother people at every restaurant where you can find a cabinet member, these are coming from public service that ought to set an example of civility in American society. And it's been made worse by what has happened to Judge Kavanaugh. I hope we can say no to mob rule by voting to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. I yield the floor.
Here's what I find fascinating about this. These guys are complete and utter rank hypocrites. Because the new vanity project on the right is what? The whole free speech thing. Where they say, oh, yeah, I care deeply about the issue of free speech. But notice how quickly they flip whenever the speech is directed at them and calls them out. Then all of a sudden, listen to what Chuck Grassley said here. Look at the framing. Mob rule. He's decrying the idea of getting in public officials' faces. Now he's yearning for the days of civility. Well, that would be, all of that is the opposite of free speech. What you call mob rule, we call free people in a free country protesting for what they believe in. That's what, he calls that mob rule. We say that's democracy at work. He calls for civility. You know what that means, right? Let me do whatever the fuck I want to do to you, but when you respond and you're angry about it, oh! Why are you being uncivil, good sir? And you gotta remember, these guys like Chuck Grassley's for every single war we've ever done. Okay, Chuck, where was your concern for civility when we were and are dropping bombs on innocent children? Minimum 200,000 innocent civilians dead in Iraq. There's been a 432% increase in drone strikes under Donald Trump, with even civilian death rates that are through the roof. Where was your concern about civility when it comes to that? Where's your concern about civility when we were torturing? Not only were we torturing innocent people. You supported it. But now, civility, you can't be mean in my face at a restaurant. What about civility, good sir? What about civility as I put somebody on the court and jam them through as they say Obamacare is unconstitutional and they want to gut your health care? And they say that we can't even regulate greenhouse gas emissions at the EPA. And they say the president might have the ability to pardon himself. Well, what about civility, good sir? Why don't you let me be a dictator and run the country and you sit down and shut up? That's the ideology. That's the mindset. And I told you guys, it's always, people on the far right use the free speech issue as a trick. It's a trick to try to disarm you to respond to them. And by the way, guys like Richard Spencer fucking admitted this. He was open. He's like, somebody asked him, do we actually believe in free speech? He's like, no, of course not. It's a tool. So what does that mean? It's a tool so that he can go out there and spread his propaganda, and then when you try to respond to it, I guess you hate free speech. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm actually in favor of free speech, so I think all these people should be able to speak and speak their mind. That's what freedom is all about. But point is, they don't really believe in it. Because as soon as you flip the scenario, and it's us, and it's the left using our free speech, then what happens? This is mob rule. Fall in line. You want to protest? You want to get in the face of elected officials? How dare you make me slightly uncomfortable as I ruin the country? What about civility? What about civility? No, see, now your standard just flipped back on you, and guess what? People like me actually believe in it. I actually believe in free speech. So, yeah, people are going to respond to you. You keep fucking up the country as you're doing. You keep imposing a far right-wing toxic ideology on everybody across the country. Damn right we're going to respond. And I don't care how many fucking crying bitch-ass speeches you give about, but the tone and the mob rule. Doesn't matter to me, son. I believe in free speech, and that's a way to get change. And by the way, if this is a path that actually works, which it might, it's probably why he's bitching about it. If you were to make Chuck Grassley or fucking Ted Cruz feel uncomfortable every time he goes out to a restaurant and you protest him, and that actually gets him to be 13% less of an asshole because he's going to think twice the next time he votes in a way that's going to ruin his night for the next month and a half, that's probably a good fucking idea. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no illusions about that kind of a strategy because turnabout's fair play. So if we do it to them, they're going to do it to President Bernie Sanders, for example. But the reality is, guys, and here's the deciding factor, they were never going to not do that anyway. You understand? So they were always going to do it against people on the left, and they're totally fine with that. It's only when you flip it on them that they're like, oh, but what about civility? This is mob rule. Somebody should put a stop to this. So it's asymmetrical warfare. You know, that's what it is. It's the right, every time they want to do something, they claim, new standard, everybody. See, for us to get in your face, it's free speech. New standard today because you're the ones who are in power and we're trying to fight against you. But then again, flip it. When the right's in power and the left does it, they're not like, hey, look, free speech is what it is. What do? Mob rule. This isn't civil. You're slightly inconveniencing people at restaurants. How dare you? So I can't stand the hypocrisy on the issue of free speech because if you actually care about it, you have to defend it at times when you don't even agree with the people expressing it. And I'm one of few voices that's been very consistent on this. I mean, you go back, I was fucking defending asshole Milo Yiannopoulos when he wanted to give a speech at Berkeley and there were fucking riots. I was defending him because I'm principled on this front. But guess what, Chuck? It works both ways, man. And these are, again, the same guys who claim, oh my God, we care so much. There's a free speech crisis on our campuses. And then when you start doing fucked up shit and they start protesting you, mob rule! Fall in line, be civil. Can't have it both ways. Pick one. Either you get to cry and bitch and moan about civility, but you have to do it across the board, or you get to cry and bitch and moan about free speech, but you have to do it across the board. They don't care about consistency because a guy like Chuck Grassley is just a partisan hack, and that's the end of the conversation.